Welcome to Season 3 of Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Trey Farkas, and on today's Pride Month episode, my conversation with Bill Blum, a non-binary small business owner who lost everything when they came out nearly 10 years ago. Prior to 2016, something didn't feel right for Bill, but they didn't quite know the problem. Until then, Bill had lived a mostly ordinary life. After growing up in Salem, Mass., Bill and their mother moved to Atkinson, New Hampshire, where Bill fell into fixing cars. They loved using their hands and the instant gratification that came with solving problems for people. The auto industry eventually led Bill to the Seacoast, where, instead of hitting D Street Tavern on Friday nights, they stayed in so they could wake up early to climb the 4,000 footers of the White Mountains. Eventually, Bill grew tired of cars. They wanted adventure, which leads to the beginning of our story, a story that is presented by our dear friends at Samonas Realty and Sarah Oleson Yoga. For more context, today, Bill is the proud owner of Pride Toolbox, a handyperson's business where Bill performs small fixes around the homes of the Seacoast. And with the group 603 Equality, Bill is also a fierce advocate for Pride rights, a cause which regularly takes Bill to Concord to fight for the endangered rights of their community. On today's episode, Bill discusses the uphill nature of that fight, why the fight is worth fighting at all, how Bill was forced to come out before they wanted to, and more. But before that, we begin with the adventure Bill embarked on in 2012, the 2,200-mile hike on the Appalachian Trail, starting in Georgia and ending in Maine.
I had a conversation with Paul Holloway, who owned the Mercedes dealer at the time, and told him I was quitting. And it wasn't because of anything that the employer did, or I got bored, did my 10,000 hours, as the Buddhists say, in that. So
is that what the Buddhists say?
I heard there's a belief, like if you...
Yeah, no, I know that quote, but I don't think it's attributed to the Buddhists.
Who is it?
It's someone very modern day.
Oh, okay.
I forget who, but someone in like the self-development space.
So I've been living a life of 20 years then. But yeah, it's I did 10,000 hours in that, and I just got bored, and people thought I was nuts. People thought I was crazy. At the time, I was a master Mercedes-Benz technician. I was making, I think, it was about $85,000 a year with no high school education. This was in 2012. So add inflation and stuff like that. That's what kind of money these people are making now. So I left that all behind, and I thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail, and I put everything in storage. I moved things back to my mom's house, and I took my car at the time, which was a Mercedes, because I leased it for dirt cheap because I worked there, and left it in the driveway and flew to Atlanta. And I had 35 pounds in my backpack with 7 days of food, and I filled up my Camelback in the airport at Hartsfield-Jackson, and I got a ride to the trail by a shuttle service. So I went to the train station in the airport, and then went as far north as you could go, and then got a ride, and the guy gave me a canister of fuel for my stove, because you can't fly with that, and then I just started hiking. And honestly, within 3 days, I met a bunch of people who I ended up continuing to run into throughout the trail.
Okay, a lot to unpack there. What prompted you to make this trip specifically?
The Appalachian Trail for me was something that was unobtainable because I was working. So I did all the mountains in New Hampshire. I started doing them in the winter. I was on Washington on January 1st one year just to do that. Like, the list gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And frankly, some of these mountains in New Hampshire, you go up there and there's literally no view. So I got pretty bored. And again, with the lack of excitement about my job, and I saved up money too. I had an old Corvette that I had at my mom's house that I never really drove. So I sold that, and wanted to kind of like take an adventure and kind of restart things, if you will. So at the time I was 32 years old. I was an outlier on the Appalachian Trail. It was either, so you had the young adults who just graduated college, who were 25, or under 25, they're still on their parents' health insurance. And then you had the recently retired crowd, and they were just doing it. And there's a saying, hike your own hike. And you could see the different communities connecting, because the Appalachian Trail is a good equalizer. And it's an equalizer in a way that when you start, I came from New Hampshire, so I knew how to hike. And some people hike it to get away from things. Some people hike it to find themselves. Some people hike it to quite literally run from the law. The year that I hiked it, we had a bank robber on the FBI's 10 most wanted list that was caught.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty wild stuff. So it's anonymous. You're in the woods with people, and everyone gets a trail name. It's something that you don't give yourself. You have to get it from someone else. You don't have to accept it. So the first couple of weeks, first couple of days, first couple of hours, people trying to figure each other out. And, what's kind of funny, I mean, there's one guy, his name is 30 Pack, because quite literally, he started hiking with a 30 pack of beer. Oh. and he made it. And he's now sober. And he's a smoke jumper out west. And he rides his bicycle up and down the Pacific coast to raise money for firefighters. So lots of different people, but yeah, it's anonymous.
Okay, what was your trail name?
Ranger Bill.
Okay, so Ranger Bill is on the Appalachian Trail. Did you have any concerns going into this? Any fears about it? Because this sounds like a terrifying experience. I'm not super woodsy. I have no survival skills. So this sounds like my worst nightmare.
Yeah. So I had zero fear, honestly. I dove right into it. Like from literally day one, I gave it everything I had, because I quit my job. I moved out of my existence out of Portsmouth. I was in the newspaper in town, announcing I was doing it. I had to do it. So I was all in. I already knew how to hike, so I kind of knew what that was about. I guess my fear was not really the unknown, but what the future was going to bring, and what that was going to look like. I didn't fear safety. I was a cis white male at the time, like early 30s, like hiking the Appalachian Trail. Like I went to a gym every day because I had 35 pounds of crap on my back, and I would walk every day. Like I was in great shape. I could kick a tree over. So I didn't fear my safety. And honestly, I also strategically, and actually the Appalachian Trail in design is set up so that when you sleep, the shelters and the water sources are not by roads. They're usually at the tops of the mountains, frankly, where the view is a lot of times. But I see safety in that, because if you are someone who wants to cause harm to other human beings, it probably takes another bit of level of brokenness in your mind to commit to actually hiking a trail in the dark and then going and stabbing people in tents.
Right. You took this trip at a crossroads in your life of sorts, and you said that people go on the trail to find themselves or to escape something. Which camp did you really fall into?
The camp I fell into when I was hiking was just adventure. And it was just like, let's check it out. Again, I was chasing a dream. I was chasing passion. I was chasing something, like I had the money to survive. And I wanted to see more of the United States in a way that spoke to me. I spent a lot of time in the woods, mountain biking or walking when I was younger, and then therefore hiking in New Hampshire. So I wanted to see the South, not the touristy parts. I wanted to experience different ways of being self-sufficient. I knew that in Portsmouth, I had my own little safety net. I mean, Pick and Pay is right over here. I'm speaking to the old timers in town now.
I don't know what that is.
So Hannaford's right here. Like the gas station was over there. My work was literally on the other side of the traffic circle. My area of daily life was small, and I knew there was more. So I was more in a adventure and passion seeking phase, and I thought honestly, when I committed to hiking the trail, the question for me was not the why; it was the how. I was going to take that experience and build upon that because I didn't know what was going to happen. I figured, like, frankly, I would wake up, I'd go hike the Appalachian Trail, and I would be successful. I'd reach the end, and then I'd be like, okay, now what do I do? And a lot of people talk about how when they do these long distance treks, they come back and they find themselves, and I didn't. I found a couple of things about me that I didn't ever know. One of them was you don't really know who you're going to run into at any point in time. And it's most important to be a genuine human being always. And the reason I say that is because in the South, it rained a lot. And it was also March, April. So it was like 60 and raining. That's during the day. So at night, take 30 degrees off of that. So it sometimes snowed. So after about 5 days of raining, everything you have is soaked. And the trail crosses roads that lead into towns, and that's where you resupply. And usually they're only a couple miles, and sometimes they're 9 or 10. But after the first incident, so I came to a road crossing, and it was pouring rain out. I knew I had to sleep in the town because the next shelter was another 10 miles, and I had to go resupply. So I knew I had stuff in town to do, and chances of getting back out here was going to be slim to none. And furthermore, it was raining, so I wanted to take a shower and be warm. And someone stopped, and they were like, "Hey, do you need a ride?" And I'm like, "Whew, I've seen this movie before." I was like, "No, I'm all set. I'm good." And I did that. And then I walked into town, and I noticed others were getting picked up. And the next person that offered me a ride, I took it. And I ended up chatting with them. They were from New Hampshire. We found a lot of commonalities, even though we were 2,000 miles away from New Hampshire at the time. And just that human interaction gave me a new outlook on life. Like when they offered me a ride, it wasn't to convert me to their religion. It wasn't to try to steal things from me. It wasn't, the gain wasn't anything on their end. And frankly, I approached that ride as a point of there's only gain for me. I'm going to get into this car with this complete stranger, and I'm going to get a ride into town. And frankly, some of the times they even give you $20 or whatever. And they'd be like, buy yourself a beer or a pizza. And when you through hike the Appalachian Trail, someone gives you $20 and they say, buy a beer and pizza. Yeah, I was like doing that anyways. That's going to be my snack because I'm going to have another dinner and another dinner.
What did it feel like when you completed it?
It was great. So the Appalachian Trail, if you hike southbound to northbound, starts in Georgia and it ends in Maine at the summit of Mount Katahdin in Baxter State Park. I've done that mountain. I've done the Knife's Edge before, so I kind of knew what I was walking into. And frankly, I knew what I was walking into once I hit New England. So I was literally walking home.
That is so crazy. You're walking from Georgia to Maine.
Yeah. And I would hear people talk down south. The whites are crazy. The whites, and I was like, they're not crazy. Like it's a pile of rocks and it's cold. And above, there's a thing called above tree line, which means you're hiking on mountains where there's no trees. So that's a different level of danger. But for me, I was walking home. So it was a bittersweet ending. There's the 100-mile wilderness, which is the last section of trail. It ends in Munson, Maine, and it's 100 miles of just straight old, like private logging companies own it. So it's recreational land by permission, or there's some private camps way off, but it's just pure nature, and it's flat mostly. So it's bogs, and you just see what trail folks call it a Mama K. It's this 5,000-foot mountain. It looks like this thing that you got to go to. And honestly, the last couple of days leading up to that, I kind of was like, Jesus, now what? Now, what's the next step here? What's the next thing? I didn't really have that figured out because I didn't hike the trail to figure anything out. I hiked the trail to hike the trail, to cross that off the list. Because again, I was peak bagging. I was chasing lists. So I was like, sweet, now I'm going to do that and do the other thing. And I got to the summit. We slack packed it. So that basically means you hike it without all of your gear. So as you hike north on the Appalachian Trail, you carry all your stuff with you all the time because you can't go back and get it. But when you slack pack, what you can do is you can have a car service or a friend or someone take your backpack and you just have bare bones, water, snacks, maybe a raincoat. Frankly, that's it. And they would take it ahead. So you'd be way faster. And it was actually like a little mini vacation because, you're able to like run now. So I slack packed that. So that was a different thing too, because I was always carrying all my stuff. And I hiked it with some really good people. Blue Sky lives in Pennsylvania, older gentleman. The Appalachian Trail is a great equalizer. Everyone shows up in different physical states. And actually, after about a month, everyone just hikes the same speed. You choose to go do a marathon day, or you choose to do 3 miles a day, but you'll eventually catch up with each other. So my last day, I finished the day after a lot of people did that started around the same time that I did. I was number 523, I think.
Slacker.
Yeah. So I started in March.
Started in March. Okay.
March 16th, ended September 26th. So average miles down south, 18. Average miles up north, 10. When I say up north, I mean New Hampshire. Down south, you're walking a lot of rolling hills, a lot of people call them mountains, but they're literally 2,000 feet. And then in Pennsylvania, yes, they add a little bit of rocks, actually mostly rocks, but it's valleys now. So you're going up 2,000 foot on a ridge, and you walk the ridge, and then you go back down, and then that's where all the railroads are in the valley.
Were there ever any? For example, by the time this airs, this will be completed, hopefully. I'm in half marathon training right now.
Nice.
And, I've done a half marathon before, so I know I can do it. But, even where my long runs right now, the most recent long run I did was 6 miles. And mile 4, I'm like, gosh, how am I going to run 13 of these? This is crazy. How do people run 26 of these? This is wild. I'm not meant to do this. And so I have throughout the run, as mile after mile, you keep oscillating between I can do this and this sucks, I can't do this. With the hiking, the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine, were you having this inner dialogue about, man, I want to give up, I can't do this? Or were you confident the whole way?
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, I'd be lying if I told you I didn't think about that at all. I committed everything to it, so I knew that I didn't want to come back not doing the whole thing. I didn't want to do 2.5 months and come back without a broken leg and be like I failed because I just couldn't sleep in the woods and hike. I didn't want to do that. I put so much into it, so I had to succeed. And there were days that it hurt. It frankly, towards the end, I was wearing 2 knee braces. My knees were junk to begin with. I was a skier. I've been skiing since I was like 3. In Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, just past that, so just north of that is the true like halfway point. And at that point, so in Damascus, which is 464 miles in, I believe, a quarter of the people quit there because it's so easy to get off trail. And there's a party on Mother's Day, around Mother's Day weekend, is trail days. So it's a big hiker party. And then once you hit Harpers Ferry, there's literally a train that brings you straight into DC. You walk across the tracks. So it's easy to get off there too. And once you hit that, there's like a 50% chance that you're going to make it. And then once you hit further north, if you hit Massachusetts, now it's like there's a 75% chance you're going to make it. Once you start getting further and further north, it was more of an injury reason why people would leave. Down south, it was more of a, this is not what I signed up for. Like a mouse just went in my food bag and ate all my food, and now I got nothing. Like, I'm not dealing with this crap anymore. Like, you saw that down south. But not up north. It was more as you went further north, I felt I was further and further committed into completing it.
The day after our live podcast at the press room in January, I hopped on an airplane to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico for what would be the best trip I have ever gone on, a yoga retreat led by the Seacoast top yoga retreat leader and friend of the show, Sarah Oleson. Sarah has 10 years of experience leading both local and international retreats. Open to all levels of yoga practice, each retreat brings different cultural immersion opportunities to better understand the land and people of each location. Like in Mexico, when I participated in a temazcal, or sweat lodge. Plus, you get multiple yoga classes per day, free time to do whatever you want, and best of all, nutritious and delicious meals thoughtfully prepared by world-class chefs every day of your stay. Each year, Sarah's retreats go to places like Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, Greece, Bali, and even in this charming spot in the United States called Maine. You can go with friends and family, or you can go solo and leave with friends for life. To book your next big trip, Sarah is offering $100 off to Seacoast Stories listeners for the next 2 weeks with the code STORIES at digital checkout. I know it's a big decision, but I promise it's a life-changing one. It certainly was for me. Again, that's code STORIES at saraholsonyoga.com, the link to which is in today's show notes. I'm going to Mexico again next January with Sarah, and I would really love to see you there. You don't need me to tell you this, but times are tough for home buyers here on the Seacoast. And in this housing crisis, I think we all could benefit from a little stability. And who better to lean on than the family that's ridden all the waves of Seacoast real estate over the last 40 years? I'm of course talking about our friends at Samonas Realty. You've heard Andrew Samonas on the show multiple times, and you know he's legit. Samonas Realty is local to the core, born and bred on the Seacoast, and obsessed with helping people find not just a house, but a home that fits their lifestyle. Waterfront condos, cozy cottages, downtown gems. They know every hidden corner of this area because they live it. Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or just curious, they'll guide you with zero pressure, all heart, and deep local expertise. So if you're ready to plant roots or to make your next move, visit SamonasRealty.com or stop by their office in downtown Portsmouth. Tell them Seacoast Stories sent you. Thanks to Samonas Realty, and thanks to Sarah Oleson Yoga for supporting the show. Now to part 2 of my conversation with Bill Blum. You do this trip in 2012, and then in the ensuing years, as you are back in the auto industry as well, you begin to question who you are, your identity. Mm-hmm. Can you take me into that and when those thoughts really started?
Yeah, I guess my gender identity is really what started. I'm the same person as I was, the same set of lungs, liver, feet, hair, all that stuff as I've always been. And I've always thought that I wasn't living authentically. Well, not always. I didn't connect the dots until, unfortunately, I was later on in life. I was already in a committed relationship. I already was a homeowner. I already was a professional, making really good money. When I started, I would say probably 2015, maybe 16, I started really thinking about, what's life about? Why am I happy on the outside, right? I had success. I didn't have the white picket fence, but I had everything else that went with it. And I knew that there was something that I couldn't tell everybody because it was just different in a way that was weird and frankly difficult for me to explain. And that was my gender identity. I should have connected the dots in 2012 when I threw out the Appalachian Trail. I did it in a kilt. Like not a wool one, but it was a hiking kilt. It frankly looked like a skirt. But it was great. Ease of movement, all that stuff. That's what I was thinking at the time. But now looking back, it's like, hey, yeah, probably should have connected that dot then. I really started thinking that I wanted to live authentically. I've always loved women's fashion, and I always gave respect to a woman who walked in who like really nailed it. They spent time and energy into their presentation. I gave that a lot of respect, and I couldn't be the cis white male in the beard going, that you look fabulous. And they're like, yeah, okay, creep, but like it was a thing. Like as a guy, like you wake up in the morning and I would go to work. It was like, what color collared shirt am I going to wear? And what color pants am I going to wear? And frankly, I had brown shoes. So they couldn't be black pants. So they were, I had no choices, but women do. And I respected that. And I wanted to figure that out. Portsmouth at the time, I was going to South Church, which is an open and welcoming community. Portsmouth in general is the city of the open door. So it was a place that was supportive for me to explore that in a way that I was guarded, because I didn't want to be this person who kept that inside any longer. I was questioning, how do I do it? Do I want to transition into a full, do I want to go from male to female entirely? Do I want to do that with surgeries, with hormones, with all the stuff, voice training, things that it takes to get there. And then this fear of that, fear of living authentically. For me, I was always afraid, or, looking back, I didn't do it in 15 and 16 because I feared that if I wanted to live authentically, it was going to cost me. And it was going to cost me my job because they weren't accepting. It was going to cost me my marriage. It was going to cost me the house and everything. Like I was going to lose it all. And I can say that most of it is true. I lost my job when I came out. A couple months later, a couple months after I lost my job, I moved out of the marital home, and then that started a 2-year-long contentious divorce process, which is finally over, and I'm glad that part's done. So Portsmouth gave me a place to do that comfortably, and gave me that space to do that, so I didn't have to take it to the grave.
Why did you ultimately make the decision to come out knowing what it might cost you?
I made that decision because I didn't want to keep it in anymore. Every day that I was not living authentically, I knew there was part of my story I couldn't tell anybody. And I didn't like that. I didn't like, I could sit there and I could talk to people in the Pride community and say, hey, like, how's it going? And I know your pain, but they were looking at a cis white male. Like I wasn't out at that point. I had things that I couldn't publicly say. And I didn't like that. And I wanted to live authentically and fabulously in a way that I'm comfortable in. And, once I finally did, or started taking those steps, like layers or like a weight was lifted off. When I came out, it was tough and it was hard. And I already said it cost me a lot. That's the bad. Let's look for the good. The good is I found a new community, a very, very supportive community, a very, very fabulous community. And honestly, a community that is guarded because frankly, they have to be. So it's allowed me to not have to worry about what if. That was a TED Talk this year. That was the theme. And my what if was, what if I took this to the grave? What would my story look like if I just continued to not live authentically, to not express my gender identity in a way that made sense in my mind? Frankly, my gender identity was mine and not anybody else's. So I lost the sense of caring about judgment from others. And that right there was absolutely, trying to think of a better way to describe it other than like a moment where it's like, finally, like, to frankly not give a crap what other people think about you is freeing. Right. So I can just live in a way that makes sense for me, because it's really, frankly, me who's going to do all the work. So that took a lot of weight off my shoulders and allowed more space for other things. So it allowed me to focus on more important things. It cost me a lot to come out, and I've told that story to lots of different people in lots of different spaces, who don't understand it, and some of them want to, and some of them, frankly, don't even care to even listen. So, that was a big decision to make, and frankly, I'm not looking back on that, and I'm glad I did it.
If you could go back and do it all differently, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I probably would have came out a lot sooner. And therefore my life would be a lot different. I wouldn't have probably gotten married. I wouldn't probably have my daughter, which is a huge part of my life. So I would have loved to experience what that would have looked like, but I know it would have changed the end result. And frankly, I don't like to look back, because you can't change it. You can learn from it. So I look forward a lot, and I look forward in how I can make the Seacoast, or even the state of New Hampshire, which is where the work is now, a better space for people who were in my situation back when I was, frankly, in the closet.
Was there a breaking point or a turning point that you can distinctly recall where you said to yourself, I can't keep this in anymore. I have to say this to the people around me?
Yeah. My ex-wife found my stash of clothes, and like literally I was standing at work, and I had to come out. Like, I was forced.
Wow. So it wasn't something you did on your own terms?
Correct.
Wow.
So I had to come out immediately. I had a stash of clothes that I would dress when no one was there to check it out and see what it looked like, and to feel that feeling and my genuineness. And she found it one day, and that really forced me to come out. And it was a long 45-minute car ride back to Portsmouth from work. And I knew from that day it was going to be different.
How so?
The story was reactive from that point on. I didn't have a chance to craft it in a way that made sense for my family and basically my spouse. It was reactionary and fragmented, and that was just bad. And, the conversations at the dinner table were about how long, why you lied to me, all these things that frankly are normal. And like the fear that literally what I feared was going to happen, what kept my secret inside for so many years, was my fear of that conversation. And to be put in a place where I couldn't control that, and now I had to just face it. It was like getting a really bad medical diagnosis. Like, the doctor tells you that, and you listen, and you're like, Jesus Christ, now what do? I can't control it. So how do I live within the space? And that's what I did. And I stumbled around in the beginning and tried to figure it out and try to work it out. And ultimately it didn't work with the marriage. But there were gains, and there were gains in other ways. The community responded very well. Work dried up. I tried to get back into the automotive field. However, that didn't happen. So I was unemployed for way longer than I should have. And after, Jesus, it was in the summer. Actually, it was June 2nd, I believe, or 1st of 2023 that I got word from the Secretary of State, that my business idea was, or my name was accepted by them. So I started my own business. And that gave me a place to live authentically. It gave me a place to make money. It gave me a place to be part of a community in which that I created. It allowed me to use my hands again. So that was cool.
If there's someone listening to this right now who finds himself, herself, themselves in the position that you were in a couple years ago, knowing that you are different than who you say you are and keeping that to yourself, what would you say to that person to help them through this time?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's 16 different ways you can look at the same problem and or situation. And if being restricted by fear is a horrible, horrible way to walk around in life. So I encourage anyone to come out, to find the resources before, in the questioning phase, or even after. Connect with the resources, because there's people who will tell you it was super easy. And there's people who tell you it was super hard. And lean on others' experience before your stuff gets found and you have to drive 45 minutes in a quiet car up 495. Like that's, yeah. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking and questioning is to start talking to people around you. And if it's someone who, if you're someone who's under 18 and you're still living at home, find your safe space where you can do that, whether it's at a school or in clubs or in a social circle, or even if there's a trusted person in your life that's not family, just talk to them. When people come out, they come out to, usually the story is they'll come out to someone who is a trusted individual, because they know that the reaction won't be the reaction that the situation won't be the situation that I was put in. It's more of, I can think of one of my best friends, or even, best friend. When I came out to my best friend, it was, are you going to accept me or not? Like, I didn't have to deal with any of this. The only thing in my brain that was thinking was, are they going to accept me or not? Because I knew we were still going to be friends. I knew, because of our relationship, that the only thing would be is if my identity would factor into that some which way or somehow. So you do it with a trusted adult, because the reaction is probably going to be lessened. So it's like a test. And then you come out to someone who's not in the community or a trusted adult. So do that, and do it in a safe space, or even just exist in safe spaces. I didn't have that. I didn't have any of that in 15 or 16. And unfortunately now, the way things are going for the trans non-binary community, it's a rough time.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What's going on in the trans and non-binary community in New Hampshire and federally?
So New Hampshire, in 2018, they passed a non-discrimination set of laws that basically had protections put in place for the trans and non-binary community to live authentically, whether it's in housing or employment, things like that. Bathrooms, sports teams, and that was signed by the Governor Sununu. And since then, there's been a national agenda by a certain group of people who are making that their political agenda. So gender identity is now a political discussion which frankly, they shouldn't be connected. But they are. And nationally, there's executive orders that have restricted. But I mean, frankly, the current administration said there's only two genders. Like flatly came out, said there's only two genders. And as of airing, there's no active trans or non-binary military personnel. And that was done with the stroke of a pen. And it was done to a very, very small amount of people. And because of the national directive, if you will, a lot of that stuff's trickled down to New Hampshire. And this is the live free or die state, right? However, it's live free or die for only a certain few, and the chosen few. The state house in New Hampshire is interesting. It's the third largest legislative body in the English-speaking world.
Which is so wild when you told me this.
Yeah, it's unique. So there's 400 plus state reps and there's 26 senators. And there's, in New Hampshire, every law has to propose legislation has to go through both houses and get heard by both houses with public comments, sessions. So there's a real opportunity to speak your mind and to advocate for what you believe in. And I love that. I'd love to sit there and say, I could speak to people in DC and really speak to the administration and say, hey, like, we're not bad people. We're human beings. And so are you. And we might not agree on pride rights or guns or healthcare or insert whatever into that mix, but we can agree like basic human beings are human beings.
When you hear that rhetoric coming from the top down, there's only two genders. How does that make you and your community feel?
It's harmful. And it's harmful in ways that often falls on deaf ears to the people that speak those words. The 25% of our population that's under 25 years old identifies within the Pride community in some way.
Say that one more time.
So if you're under 25 years old, so the Gen X, Y, whatever that
ABC.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're 25 years of age or younger, 25% of that census, if you will, or community, about 25% identifies somewhere within the Pride community as a whole.
Identifies in the Pride community or supports the Pride community?
Identifies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're not allies, which allies are people who support it. They identify within their gay, bisexual, lesbians, trans, gender nonconforming, non-binary, like all the colors of the rainbow. Yeah. So there's a people in the position of power to make the laws are, unfortunately, right now, the center of the circle of influence. They're cis white males who have been, they're usually in their mid 50s, right? Go tell a 55-year-old woman who's been cooking cookies the same way for 45 years that now this new thing's coming that you've never even been exposed to, because frankly, trans and non-binary people, we're 1% of the population. So you might not know one directly, but you know someone that knows one, and one of us. And honestly, if you transitioned to trans femme, so someone who was born male and transitioned to female, there's a lot of work that's done by themselves to be part of the female community. And when I say that, what I mean is they've gone through so much, and it's important to them. In lots of different things are important to them, but one of them is passing privilege. So if right now, if a trans femme woman was going to go and use a bathroom, like all they want to do is not get clocked. Like, hey, you're in the wrong line. Their purpose is to blend in, not to draw attention. It's the opposite of that. We go into bathrooms to use the bathroom as it's intended and then wash our hands on the way out. That's it. Frankly, as things are going, as a cis woman There's more fear should be put in upon the fact that you're going to get picked up off the street with someone posing as an ICE agent than you are going to be assaulted by a trans person in a bathroom. Like that's the data that, or the feelings that I have is your cis women are more at risk about men causing harm right now than trans people ever will be. There's not a case in New Hampshire of a trans person going into a woman's room or even a men's room, because I'll give space for that too, and causing harm to anybody. So,
and as part of your advocacy work, when you raise statistics like that to people who are anti-Pride movement, what reaction are you met with?
Lots of reactions. I've been called a pedophile in Concord. Frankly, like just walking in the State House, beautiful place. And
in the State House,
wow. right outside the House chambers. It's lined in marble. There's awesome. I mean, it's
by someone who works for the government.
No, by someone on the other side. Okay. So an agitator. There's a few of them. There's a few of us who always show up, and there's a few of the others who show up. Actually, there's more of us. But it's not a tit for tat game. So yeah, in the State House, I was called a pedophile for just simply living authentically. And I'm like, you don't even know anything about me. So it's harmful, and it for me, I know and that if anyone were to look up anything about me, that's not in there at all. And it never will be, because that's not who I am. So to throw out lies, I know that's what they are. And they're just there to get clicks or to get things, attention.
Under your skin.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks about me, because I know I'm a decent human being, and I know I'll do the best for as many people around me as I can. So it's a tough place to be in. And I know going up to Concord, sometimes it's like peeing into the wind, like frankly. However, I might change that one person who didn't understand, or I might influence that person who's lived in the closet for 30 years and just never had the voice. I'm visible for the invisible. I do what I do, and I know it means more than what you see, because to someone who is questioning anything, like, are they going to come to you and ask you about it? Or are they going to come to me? And just publicly doing things like this and doing advocacy work in general, like, yeah, I get outreach, and that's what my success is.
Why you? There's a lot of people who could take up the torch for the community and go do the backbreaking work of going to Concord and speaking on behalf of the Pride community in this state and trying to protect and defend your community during this bizarre time, which I'm sure is very difficult. Why are you doing this? So
I'll start by saying it's a team, and it's a well-established team. Our board at 603 Equality is a majority of trans or non-binary people. So that we as an organization that are doing the advocacy work are actually part of the community that we're advocating for. So we know what the struggles are because we live them daily. When the thought is around why me, I kind of fell into it. And frankly,
it's a theme of your life.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk forever, but I was talking with someone the other day, a woman who owns a construction business in Maine. She's like, you got a business degree without going to college. And I'm like, yeah, because I just kind of make it work and figure it out as I go. So that's kind of where I'm at. But so I do it because it's also safe for me living in Portsmouth. It's a safe community. I can, I'm going to tell you, I really, there's been some hate, but it's not what the stories that I've heard directly from individuals that receive the hate elsewhere in the state. We have people who live in Colebrook and up north that I know, and they're advocating just as hard or even harder than we are down here on the seacoast. And they're afraid to hang a pride flag out front, or maybe they do because it's, they own 20 acres of land and that's what it is. So I'm in a unique spot to do it, and I'm at a point in my life and financially able to dedicate a little bit of time to the advocacy work. So that's what I do. That's my calling, and I know it's important. I see kids, and I see real harm. Actually, why the reason I do it is because the kids. I see harm in laws that are being proposed or even passing that are targeting our kids. And they target our kids because they can't vote. They're not adults. They can't drive to Concord and advocate for themselves. They live in homes that might not be supportive. And unfortunately, the statistics show that they're at an alarmingly increased rate of suicide risk. And frankly, they're actually doing it too. So I do it for them because we can talk about the other side about, pro-life and how that's like a thing. And that's they beat the drum. Well, we already have people who are alive and they just want the simple freedom that everyone else deserves just to live authentically. And you're going to take that away from them because you don't agree with it. Like that's why I do it. Don't harm our kids who can't fight publicly as much as an adult can do.
How would you assess the strength of the Pride community on the seacoast?
It's very, very strong. It's an insular, weird place because I see the seacoast embracing the Pride community as a whole, up as far as into Stratham and into Newfields and Newmarket and places like that. And then you start getting away from the seacoast and it's more of the other side and more, there might be that one or two trans folks in the town, but no one really knows them or no one really talks about them because there's no pride in Candia. There's no pride event in Candia. There's no pride event in, I'm trying to think of another random, like
Atkinson.
Yeah, exactly. There's no pride event there. It's done elsewhere. And I give people credit for starting movements and because movements start at coffee tables and conversations. And I give them credit. However, like that's a big lift. So it's easier for people to come to places that are supportive.
Right. And then correct me if I'm wrong, and I know most of your work is done in New Hampshire, but in Maine as well, York, Ogunquit area is pretty strong community there too, right?
Yeah. So Maine and New Hampshire's surrounded by supportive states for the trans non-binary community. Maine is a sanctuary state for the Pride community.
What does that mean?
So they have protections in place that make sure that discrimination will not come to someone in the community. Look at the governor up there a couple months ago. There was a famous interaction at the White House, and I'll see you in court. Because debating with someone who doesn't agree with you is just banter. And
right.
And she knew that ultimately it was going to go to court, and it did. And Maine has laws on the books and has for a while that says that you can't harm this community. Healthcare is defined based on the needs of the family, not the needs of the government, which is what New Hampshire's doing. The decisions for the children of Maine are made in the doctor's office by the parents and the psychologists and the medical providers based on what they all, and the child too, what they all come to agreement. In New Hampshire, the decisions are made by lawmakers, not doctors. And that's challenging. Replace pride with anything else. That's just challenging for me. So Maine has that, and they've been a leader, and it sucks because my daughter goes to school in Maine. Like literally, I drive over the bridge, and now I'm in a place that's welcoming and supportive of with legislation that supports that. So it's not, yes, a gun quit is very, very pride orientated, and I love that. And that has, in my mind, it's not because there's laws in place. It's because they created their own community up there, and the same is true in Provincetown and Mass. So the community is safe, the laws are safe, the protections are in place, and people are going there. And unfortunately, New Hampshire was on that track until recently.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. You're doing great work over in Concord. If there's one thing that by the end of this year you could have accomplished from your time in Concord, what would you hope that thing would be?
The one thing that I would like to do is to get to a point where the governor is understanding of what the Pride community needs. More specifically, it takes a playbook from the last governor, Sununu. Sununu, yes, passed 3 harmful bills to the Pride community last year. And frankly, one of them is still challenged in court. I'm hopeful that AOT is the checks and balances for the legislation that's happening. And it's a big hope. It's an unknown. I'd love to sit there and say that, I would love to see the whole state of New Hampshire to do this, but that's changing hearts and minds. And I know it's a long battle. I hope that the way that our originating documents for the state of New Hampshire, when they were written, I hope those beliefs that celebrate the worth and dignity of all people are recognized and listened to and followed through upon in the governor's office. So I encourage anybody to reach out to the governor and to make phone calls and call them often. And you can leave voicemails after hours. So if you want to have fun, go ahead and do it.
So let's talk about how all of this relates to your business, Pride Toolbox, your handyperson business, where you do simple home repair jobs for people all over the seacoast, but mainly in Portsmouth. Pride is literally in the name of your business. And you said earlier that you are loud and proud about who you are. Have you named it as such because you want potential clients to know what the values of the business is?
Yeah. I will say, as a business owner, politics and business never should match. And in my life, they do. And I did that for safety, because I didn't want to show up as a non-binary person to someone's house who wasn't supportive. I didn't want to miss the Gadsden flag. I didn't want to miss the gun in the back of the truck and then get into their house and go, oh, fuck, this is a bad idea. And then, have them cause harm, like physical harm that I can't defend myself because I literally got a pocket screwdriver or something and I'm under their sink. There's situations where clients will reach out, not being able to connect the dots and say that it's a Pride supportive business and hey, I want you to reach out. My contact, my website has a form you fill out, and I'll make sure I'll do my own research and figure out whose house I'm going to. So it's another level of safety. And then you'll get put into the queue of work. And that might look like tomorrow, or it might look like next year. Next September, I might be able to get over there and take a look at your project. So I'll just come out and say it. Frankly, if someone I know is not supportive of the Pride movement or is not supportive of myself as an individual or my business, I I'll ship them I'm too busy. How about you wait 6 months and then I'll get over there. And instead of saying, no, go pound sand because you are an anti-masker or vaxxer or, whatever. I don't get that far. I just politely decline. I'm in an interesting situation. So as a small business owner, I have to make money to support my existence here in Portsmouth, which frankly, no secret.
It's hard.
Yeah, very
Can't
expensive.
confirm.
Yeah, and hard, and difficult. And as a result of the advocacy work that I do, the customers support my business. So Pride customers support my business. 95% of my customers are openly or secretively in the Pride community.
Wow.
So they are putting their money where it matters. They frankly pay my health insurance because the income I get from my business pays for my health insurance. They pay for my rent. They pay for the van, the tools that are in the van, and they're giving back in ways that they might thank me in person for going to Concord and speaking for the community, but they also thank me with their money by giving it directly to my business. If I was to look back in a moment in time and sit there and say, I'm going to be doing this and, I'm going to be working out of a van and fixing I'm going to be paid to hang TVs and swap out switches for dimmer switches in people's houses. And that's going to be enough to make a living in Portsmouth in 2025, where, the average rent's $2,500 a month. Plus, I'm going to tell you, you're crazy, because that just doesn't sound like a good plan. However, I'm 2 years in. It's not only a plan, it actually works.
Let's go, Bill.
Yeah. There's one thing that really, really drives me is to prove to actually, frankly, this goes back to the advocacy work, prove that as a non-binary person, you can be a small business owner. You can live on your own. You can be a parent. You can be a upstanding citizen of the community in which you live. You can run for office. I ran for school board in town. I missed it by 80 votes. And as long as no one resigns from the committee until November, I won't be on the school board because I'm next in line. What drives me is the success. The carrot for me is to prove to others that if you have a way of making something work, it can work. And you might eat a shit sandwich for lunch today. And then tomorrow you're going to ride that high of a customer saying, Jesus, thank you so much. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know I could do that. That's amazing. Like, that's my secret sauce. What gives me the energy to work and do my billing at 10 o'clock at night and to send out my emails for the next day is to prove to others, or to be the example for others, that you can make your own thing work, no matter which space that is.
This has been a fantastic conversation. I think the people will really like this one. Bill, we have one final question. We ask this same final question at the end of every episode every week, and I'll ask it to you. If you were to leave this earth tomorrow, what do you hope people would remember about you?
I would hope that my legacy that is left for others is one of being genuine in who you are, no matter what it looks like to others, to not be fearful of outcomes that haven't happened. I envision others remembering the advocate who just stood loud and proud no matter whether it's raining or it's sunny. And it's important for me to see that in others. So what I would like to leave is, don't be afraid to live authentically, and you can do it. And yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me, Bill.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
That's Bill Blum of Pride Toolbox and 603 Equality. For more information on their advocacy work or for how Bill can fix that leaky faucet of yours, you can visit the links in today's show notes. Thank you for listening. And a huge thank you to everyone who came out to the Word Barn last Thursday for our sold-out live podcast. The full video replay of that special evening will come out this Thursday on the Seacoast Stories YouTube channel, so make sure you're subscribed over there. It will also air on Apple and Spotify, per usual. That's it for today. But if you see me around town this week, perhaps tonight at the Community Oven in Hampton, or at the Best of New Hampshire event at Flag Hill Winery on Thursday, then please stop me and say hi. I would love to hear your story. Until Thursday, everybody, have a great week. Live free or die.